Welcome in to American Soccer is Weird here on Morning Kicker. And I'm Robert. He's Jason. And with the Gold Cup being on Fox Sports, we've seen a lot of Alexi Lalas. He's always been very antagonistic, but it seems like he's turned it up a notch this summer. You have some thoughts, Mr. Davis?
Yeah, first let's see what Alexi was up to yesterday in Houston. This is Alexi Lalas astride is that a horse or a pony? I don't know the difference. Rob, are you up on your equine differences? Do you know?
I just know I think that's a horse, but it's not the biggest horse.
It's not the biggest horse. I can appreciate that Alexi maybe isn't a veteran horse rider. Like maybe he's not an equestrian, but this does look like he's at the fair and daddy paid $3 for him to take a ride. Let's just say that, right?
Okay.
I'm just saying that. He was wearing his hat. This was like a thing on the broadcast yesterday. Now, I will say that I did not engage with what he said on television. I was doing radio before the game. When I started watching the game, I ended up watching in Spanish. I did not engage with Fox yesterday for the match. I know this was on the over the air, Big Fox. It's not on Fox Sports. It was on the Big Fox, which means a bigger platform for somebody like Alexi Lalas. And okay, let me also say, full disclosure, I would call myself at this point an acquaintance of Alexi. I don't know that I would call him a friend at this point in my life, but there have been times when I would have called Alexi Lalas a friend of mine, that I would have said, hey, my friend Alexi. And the other part of this is I probably wouldn't be sitting here, or things might have been different for my soccer broadcasting career if not for Alexi Lalas. He has been very kind. He's done a lot of things. But we need to talk about what's going on here, because I think maybe people are not maybe people do have an idea of what's going on, but all they care about is that Alexi is doing these things. I'm sure there are people who kind of agree with the line that Alexi is taking, which is largely political these days. I mean, even in a soccer context, Alexi is finding ways to be political. And I know that he has posted about his choices when it comes to candidates and things like that. And I don't know if Alexi would take any issue with this. I don't think he would, because he's very clear about this. Alexi is putting on a show, right? He's putting on a show, and in the sense that this may not be 100% who Alexi Lalas is when he takes off his microphone and goes home at night. And I have seen Alexi. I'm not going to tell you anything he told me privately or anything like that, but I have been out to dinner with Alexi Lalas when he is off. When the Alexi Lalas American soccer guy thing is not happening, and it's a very different person. And a lot of us are like just to kind of give you my perspective. I'm doing a show right now. This is not exactly who Jason Davis is when I step away. When I'm on the radio, that's not exactly the same Jason Davis that talks to my wife or my kids, or even like I might even say things occasionally that I don't 100% come to naturally, that are maybe meant to foster a conversation. But Alexi takes that to the extreme. Alexi is somebody who says, this is a show. I am a showman. I will say things. I will do things to foster a conversation. And honestly, you can see this very much in the context of, I don't know, a Howard Stern or somebody like that, Rob, right? Or really any of the political pundits out there right now who are kind of everywhere in society and media, right? Some of them may really truly hold whatever opinions they're espousing, but a lot of them probably don't, or they don't think about it that deeply. They say things to get themselves attention. And Alexi, this is not, I'm not even telling tales out of school here. Alexi is on the record saying that if somebody wants to give him the opportunity to be a talking head, a political pundit, to be on television all the time, or to be on a podcast making millions of dollars through Spotify or whatever, he would happily take it. That's his end goal. His end goal with the World Cup coming, Alexi Lalas sees his runway to maybe being that guy, right? To being ubiquitous, to being Stephen A. Smith, Rob. That's what he wants to be. He wants to be Stephen A. Smith. And that's That everything, you have to see everything through that prism. It doesn't mean you can't hate the guy if you don't like his opinions. It doesn't mean that you can't have negative responses to what he does. But remember that you are feeding the beast when you respond that way. If you post on social media, look at this idiot Alexi Lalas, look at this cowboy hat, look at this terrible opinion, you are doing exactly what he wants you to do, Rob.
Yeah, and here we are. I mean, that's the thing, but I'm glad you're acknowledging it, because like I said, we've been watching a lot of Alexi this summer with the Gold Cup here, and there's only more to come next summer with the World Cup on our shores, and lots of teams, lots of games. So there's going to be a ton of coverage, and Fox doesn't really expand their panel too much. He's going to be on there almost around the clock.
I will say that Marisa Dew is a good addition. I will say that I think the jury is out a little bit on Landon Donovan. I don't know that his in-game work is as good, but I do think that when he's on the panel, when he's providing his perspective, he can be pretty good. There are lots of, we can get very in the weeds on how we want our soccer presented in America. And not everybody is in the same lane in terms of how we want to see this, right? There is a very distinct group of people, especially those attuned to the Premier League, who thinks that NBC does it best. That NBC does it the way it should be done. They treat the game seriously. It's all very we're taking this. We have Robbie Musto, and we have whoever else is on but Tim Howard is giving this very kind of staid approach to discussing it, and that feels, I don't know, English, I guess, is the right way to say it. I don't know how you would kind of, what category you would put that in. That is a particular way of doing things, even though the English have their own
I would
version.
say there's a lot more reverence in there, reverence and analytical, whereas the Fox goes very much emotional and reactionary.
But then you also have, with several English people on the panel, you also have what Paramount and CBS do around their Champions League coverage, right? Which a lot of people point to that and go, well, they're just trying to be the NBA show from TNT, right? They're just trying to replicate those vibes. Micah Richards being this cartoon character on television. And that is all of that is kind of more in the, we're having a fun time. We're not going to, this is all goof. This is all being crazy. This is all taking cracks at one another. This is all what you would get with your mates in a pub, right? Or your friends in a bar, if we want to be American about it. Well, then Alexi and what Fox does is sort of taking some elements of that and adding just in the bombastic American approach to sports, right? It's sports talk radio on television, for lack of a better way of describing it. And I grew up in that tradition, and I grew up in that with that ideal as to what sports are supposed to be. I mean, I got to where I am in part because I listened to so much radio and internalized all. Now I have my own approach, and I think that I have found for me, and maybe other people would disagree, but I think I found a middle ground between the being bombastic and being crazy and saying things just to get a rise out of people, and being smart and analytic and being reasonable with my takes on various topics. But this is an era when hot takes sell. They do. Again, you just need to look at Stephen A. Smith in terms of somebody from sports who has now flipped that into something bigger and better for himself, and wonder if that's what Alexi is chasing. And he's on the record as saying he would happily take those opportunities. I think he told John Arand on a podcast. John Arand does business of sports stuff. And I think Alexi said something like that. Like, I would happily take that opportunity to be the Stephen A. Smith, to be the next one.
Well, to your point, I mean, he doesn't really say no to a whole lot of things, but in the air of, talk sports radio, like the second guy, I got to be the opposite opinion, right? No matter what. So Alexi Lalas, maybe he's good for American soccer. There's a lot of times where there wasn't any American soccer coverage really. So a loud voice had to kind of maybe fill in the gaps between tournaments or between the marquee moments when the general populace looks at soccer. So people that are general sports and maybe NFL, NBA, they don't know anything about soccer, but they, connect American soccer and Alexi Lalas, and he's maybe dragged American soccer through those dark times before there was Galazos, or there was the NBC Sports. And to your point, you're saying he gave, kind of paved the way or assisted in some way of you getting to where you are. Yeah. So maybe there's but at the same time, it's not that necessary now. Does he really have to drag it? Does he have to drag American soccer to the mainstream like he maybe once did 10 years ago?
So maybe you're asking a question of whether or not we need Alexi Lalas, and I think that's a different. I think that's. I don't know that. I don't know that that's his consideration, right? I'm not saying he's 100% selfish in everything he does, but this is the job, right? This is his career. This is his, again, whatever he wants, whatever his ego is kind of pushing him towards, right? And we all have one, right? Like if we did at some point on Morning Kick Around, where I sat down and I've had discussions about my career with other people, and we did like a, inside the actor's studio, only it was inside the dumb soccer guy's studio with me, Jason Davis, and you were asking me questions about how I view my job and how I approach it and all that stuff, I would probably have similar thoughts as to what is driving Alexi Lalas. It's just how far you're willing to go in the quest to meet those goals, Rob. Now it's also about talent and about likability or popularity or who cares about, like, just because I'd go Alexi Lalas or I go big or I start yelling all the time doesn't mean I'm going to get a lot more attention and make a lot more money. But there are people who buy into that theory. The louder you are, the more provocative you are, the more aggressive you are, the more you walk the lines. Okay. And I'm going to bring in a message here, a chat from FC Neo Tokyo. Beyond idiotic, dude's a grifter and POS. Like, he literally tried to blame U.S. men's national team losses and the fact we let brown and black people on the team. No, he did not say that.
Yeah, was that implication?
But what he did say, this is Alexi knowing what he's doing, walking a line, riling people up on purpose, while also being careful not to say the literal thing that FC Neo Tokyo says he said, which is that brown and black people are the problem. That's not what he said. What he said was that maybe diversity hurts our national team because it means we have all these disparate ways of playing and we can't bring it all together. And look, if you watch that game last night and you watch how Mexico plays, all of those Mexican players grow up in Mexican soccer playing Mexican football, and they look like a team who play the same way from the moment they start kicking a ball at 4 or 5 years old to the moment they're on the national team. That is not the case for the U.S. men's national team. It's much more of a jigsaw puzzle. Does this piece fit? What do I got to put? And I do not want our team to be less diverse. I do not want our team to give up the quest to win a World Cup with the kind of team we have. I think that would be the best way to go about this. But I think it's reasonable to ask that if in the short term or in certain moments, if there's a sense of, well, we kind of make it more, or we have a more difficult level, a degree of difficulty higher in the United States with our national team than, say, Mexico does, or Germany does, or name any world power. And so Alexi said it in a way that I don't agree with, said in a way that feels regressive and wrong to me, but that's exactly why he said it that way, because he knows there are people who respond emotionally rather than intellectually to it.
Yeah. Another just kind of look at the comments, and a couple different opinions coming in here. SN Chalmers, Lalas is necessary evil to counterbalance the years of anti-soccer hatred from the American sports.
No, okay. I'm going to take issue with this. Okay. And again, I didn't play in a World Cup. I didn't drop an album in the 90s. I didn't have long red hair and a beard. I didn't do all that stuff. And Alexi's profile is much bigger than mine for that reason. And maybe that's why you would say something like that. But I'm out here, right? Somebody mentioned the Cooligans earlier. The Cooligans are out here. There are lots of people in American soccer who are pushing back against those anti-soccer hatred elements in American sports. I guess it's just a question of who the powers that be, the people in charge who have the ability to tap somebody on the shoulder and say, you get to be the guy most heard, whether they want Alexi Lalas or they want somebody else. That's what I would say about that. Right. And again, I would love for it to be me. Again, I got an ego. I chose this as my living. Of course, I would love that to be me, but it doesn't have to be me. It can be somebody else, but maybe it shouldn't be Alexi Lalas anymore.
To the point of the homogeneous or the unified approach that the Mexican team had. Producer Jenny had a good. She threw in her comment saying that, like, perhaps rather than bringing that down in an ethnic way, perhaps American soccer just needs more of a one direction to pull in. Well, education. And are we pulling? We're not even pulling in the same way. The leagues aren't even pointing in the same direction.
Well, that's a good point. But I do think that's like herding cats, right? The problem is that it's not just about like selfish interests who are pushing us in one direction or another, or their little area, their little province, their little, people get very protective of this. It's not just that. It's also that we are always going to be a national team because of the nature of American influence around the world, who have players like Malik Tillman, who have players like Yunus Musa, who have players like Anthony Robinson and Fowler and Balogun. And I could go on and on and on. And that's like those players, some of them born in the U.S., but not raised in the U.S. in a soccer context. Some players like Ricardo Pepi, raised in a very specific soccer context, born and raised in the United States, but raised in a very specific soccer context down there in Texas, near the border with Mexico. Whereas you have other people, I grew up in Minnesota, grew up in the Northeast, grew up in Washington State. Like, how do you, part of what makes this country awesome, and why I still, as a 45-year-old man, is like, I need to see more of my country, is that there are so many things and so many different cultures and so many, I've never really experienced a lot of what culture is in a lot of places. And I know it's very different than mine. And I think that's okay. I think that's part of what makes America awesome. I can recognize it makes putting together a national team that can win a title, a world championship, more difficult, but I think that should be our quest. We should take that on and want it to do it that way.
I definitely am on the same page with you there. We definitely don't want to get regressive to progress just for soccer's sakes. That's how I feel. I
just think it's impossible anyway. It's a non-starter. Like what Alexi said is, again, to try to get the emotional response, knowing he knows it's not possible. How would you even institute a program that's like, we need a homogeneous approach to soccer? What would that even mean? Like, you're going to say, oh, again, we're only going to do one section of the country? No. We're going to eliminate anybody not raised outside of the United States? No. Like, you're going to get yourself in big trouble with that, and you'd be missing out on. Never mind. Let's move on, Rob.
Thank you, everyone, for joining into the conversation here. That's what the show is all about, to try to, open up the American soccer conversation here on the show. Subscribers, we are near 2,800. We could be hitting that during the show here as we speak. We've seen a couple added today. Thank you so much for becoming an MK Ultra. Just $3.99 a month gets you priority commenting on these live videos, early access to videos, bonus content, and access to the Discord server. You can also support on ko-fi.com/morningkickaround to donate to our specific goals there. And you can also find us on social media at Morning Kick Around at X, Instagram, and Blue Sky.